They abandoned the very woman who gave them life. When their old mother cried for help, her greedy children turned their backs and left her to suffer alone. But what none of them knew was that her disappearance would uncover a truth so powerful it would bring the entire village to tears. This is the story of greedy children abandoned their old mother. But what happened next left them speechless. In a quiet African village surrounded by green hills and red soil lived Mama Ifunanya, a widow with 3 grown children, Obi, Ada, and Keen. She had raised them alone, working under the sun, selling fruits, and sleeping hungry many nights so her children could eat. Her love for them was deeper than the village river. But as the years passed, her strength began to fade. Her wrinkled hands could no longer carry baskets, and her voice trembled when she called their names. Yet her heart was full of gratitude, believing her children would now care for her as she had cared for them. One day, Mama Ifunanya gathered her children and divided her small farmland among them, saying softly, "My children, this is all I have. Use it well." At first, they thanked her, but soon greed crept into their hearts. Obi wanted more land, Ada wanted her gold earrings, and Keen wanted to sell the family home. They forgot the love that raised them and began to argue daily, each thinking only of what they could gain. Mama watched with tears, realizing her kindness was being repaid with selfishness. When Mama fell ill, she called her children for help. But Obi said he was too busy farming, Ada claimed her husband would not allow her to travel, and Keen said he had no money for medicine. So the old woman sat alone in her clay hut, coughing through the cold nights, whispering prayers to the gods. Days turned to weeks and no one came. Her neighbors pitied her, bringing her food sometimes, but they too were poor. The woman who once gave it all now had no one to give her even a drink of water. One stormy night, Mama Ifunanya packed her small bundle, a wrapper, a walking stick, and her Bible and left her hut. The rain soaked her hair as she walked into the darkness. No one saw her go. No one called her name. By dawn, her house was empty. The neighbors searched for her, but only found her footprints disappearing into the forest path. The village mourned quietly, while her children argued about who would now own her home. Months later, a wealthy stranger arrived in the village. He was well-dressed, driving a shining car, and asked about Mama Ifunanya. The villagers told him how she had vanished into the forest. The man grew silent and looked around sadly. When Obi, Ada, and Keen heard of the visitor, they rushed to meet him, thinking he might have come to offer them money. But when he looked into their eyes, his gaze was full of something they couldn't understand: disappointment. Gathering the villagers under the great Irako tree, the stranger spoke. "I met Mama Ifunanya years ago when I was a poor traveler," he said. "She fed me when I had nothing and gave me shelter. I promised her that one day I would repay her kindness." The villagers gasped as the man continued. "Before she disappeared, she came to me asking that her home be turned into a shelter for widows and orphans. She said her own children had everything but love." The entire crowd went silent. The children's hearts sank like stones. That night, Obi, Ada, and Keen could not sleep. They remembered the days their mother smiled despite her pain, the nights she stayed awake cooking for them, and how they ignored her last cries for help. Guilt wrapped around their hearts like chains. They went to her old hut, now covered in dust and cobwebs. As they stepped inside, Ada saw her mother's old wrapper folded neatly beside her Bible. Tears filled her eyes. "We left her, and she never stopped loving us," she whispered. The next morning, the 3 children went to the forest, hoping to find their mother's resting place or a sign of her. They searched for hours until they reached a small hut built beside a stream. Inside, they found an old wooden stool, flowers, and a stone marked with her name. They fell to their knees and wept. "Forgive us, Mama," Obi cried. "We were blinded by greed." The wind blew gently through the trees, as if the forest itself was listening. From that day, they vowed to honor her memory. The children returned to the village and transformed their mother's old house into a place of kindness. They fed widows, clothed orphans, and cared for the poor just as she had done. Slowly, the villagers began to respect them again, saying, "Mama Ifunanya's spirit lives in her children now." And sometimes when the wind passed through the yard at night, they heard a soft whisper, "My children, love is the true wealth of life." They would smile through their tears, knowing their mother's spirit was at peace. Years later, the shelter became the heart of the village, a place of laughter, hope, and healing. Travelers who passed by often stopped to rest, and stories of Mama Ifunanya spread far and wide. Her children, once greedy, became symbols of repentance and change. And so the elders would tell the young, "A heart that forgets kindness will one day remember sorrow. But those who honor love, even after mistakes, will find peace."